Good morning. This is Barry Bryson welcoming you to another 5 Good Minutes with the Word. Thank you for joining me today. We are in a larger series of study entitled Encountering Jesus, and we're going to spend a few of our times together talking about Peter's relationship with Jesus and really following the arc of his encounter with Jesus throughout his lives, mostly in the Gospels, although we'll take a stop or two in the book of Acts and a stop or two from 1st and 2nd Peter. Yesterday, Peter meets Jesus for the first time. And when he was introduced to Jesus, we said it's important to remember two things which happen. One is that Jesus changes his name from the good Jewish name Simeon to Cephas, which means rock. And the Greek translation of that is Petros. That's where we get his name Peter, which is the name we know him by. When he met Jesus through his brother Andrew. Andrew had been a disciple of John the Baptist. John personally pointed Andrew and I believe Philip in Jesus' direction. They spent the day with Jesus and immediately knew he was the Messiah. The first thing that Andrew did was find his brother and introduce him as the Messiah. So when Peter meets Jesus, he meets him as the Messiah. That's important to remember. Well, today, Peter is going to make the decision to follow Jesus as his disciple. He didn't do that first day when Jesus changed his name. As we know from Luke's gospel, it took a little while. Jesus finds his way to Peter's house in Luke chapter 4. In fact, he heals Peter's mother-in-law of a fever. He eats dinner at Peter's house. He heals the sick all evening long outside Peter's house, there at the door of Peter's house. But Peter is still a fisherman. As we introduced last week, we talked about the fact that he and Andrew together owned a boat. They were in a fishing business as partners with James and John, who also owned a boat, or at least were piloting the boat of their father. He's still fishing, because when we meet him in chapter 5, he spent the night fishing, and Jesus makes his way to the seashore of the Sea of Galilee and begins teaching the crowd. Peter would have been there after working the midnight shift, trying to fish at night. He evidently has caught nothing, and he's cleaning and repairing his nets before he goes home and gets some sleep so that he can go back out again the next night. But Jesus has other ideas. And Jesus is pressed in by the crowds, and he wants a place where he can easily teach the crowd. So he gets into Peter's boat and asks Peter to take his morning and maybe a bit of his afternoon away to row him a little from shore so he can more easily teach. And this is what happens. Luke chapter 5, verse 1, it came about while the multitude were pressing around him and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, that's the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two boats lying at the edge of the lake, but the fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing their nets. And he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and he asked him to put away a little from the land. And he sat down and began to teach the multitudes from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon said, "Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing, but at your bidding I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish, so much that their nets began to break. And they signaled to their partners in the other boat for them to come and help. And they came and filled up both of the boats so that they both began to sink. And when Simon Peter saw this, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man," because amazement had seized him, and all his companions, because of the catch of fish which they had taken. And so also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and they followed him. Well, this miracle, we could talk about it all day. I mean, the heat of the day is not the time to catch in this fashion. And yet, being a good host, Simon indulges Jesus, although he tells him it isn't going to work, but then it does work. And we really don't understand the depth of his feeling I mean, we do, but they believed in this culture of defilement, that bad people could defile you by their mere presence, and he feels like he is a defiling person. And so he needs Jesus, who is clearly holy, to get away from him. And then we can all hear the tone in Jesus's voice when he says, don't be afraid. From now on, you'll catch men. And they left everything on the beach and they followed Jesus. When we talked about Mary of Bethany, we said there's a theme, you know, she's always at Jesus' feet. Well, Peter is always leaving his boat, and he'll leave his boat again tomorrow when we watch him, along with Jesus, walk on water from Matthew's Gospel. Thank you for joining me for another 5 Good Minutes.